Bruce was truly ahead of his time. He called me up and said, "You know, I want to make a movie with a fight scene everyone will remember, called The Way of the Dragon." Then he added, "Would you come?" He was the most feared name in martial arts. The one who could stop a man mid-assault with a single move. But behind Bruce Lee's legendary on-screen presence lay a shocking truth. Roundhouse kicks. Side kicks straight to the face. People thought, wow, Bruce Lee. And then came Chuck Norris. That's how I got into martial arts. Many actors refused to work with him, and refused to explain why. For decades, Chuck Norris stayed silent, following the example of his fellow martial arts experts. But now, at 85 years old, he finally breaks the silence on why so many actors refuse to work with Bruce Lee. Bruce was a very rare individual. Physical conditioning was his life. And it was fear, not fame, that kept people at a distance from the dragon. A meeting with a legend. It was the summer of 1966, within the lively yet tightly knit circles of elite martial arts in Los Angeles, when Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee first crossed paths. On the surface, they couldn't have seemed more different. Norris, a quiet but formidable karate champion, had already won numerous titles, including the prestigious Professional Middleweight Karate Championship, which he would hold for 6 consecutive years. Lee, meanwhile, was still navigating the early stages of his Hollywood breakthrough, working as Kato in the Green Hornet, while quietly preparing a storm that would redefine the global perception of martial arts. Their meeting wasn't a staged clash for publicity. It was far more subtle, an organic convergence of two minds destined to reshape the martial arts world. They met through mutual acquaintances in the martial arts community, drawn together not by rivalry but by curiosity and a thirst for growth. Instead of testing their strength in public arenas, the two legends chose privacy. Behind closed doors, in silent dojos or even the calm of private homes, they trained together for hours. No cameras. No crowds. Just sweat, silence, and shared passion. Their sessions were more than sparring. They were symposia of technique and philosophy. Norris, rooted in Tang Soo Do and American karate, brought a formidable arsenal of high, precise, and powerful kicks rarely seen in Chinese systems. His side kicks were devastating, his roundhouse kicks crisp and economical. These techniques fascinated Lee, who always believed in adapting and absorbing what was useful, no matter the system. In return, Lee exposed Norris to a whirlwind of fluid and unpredictable movements. His Jeet Kune Do, still in its embryonic stage but already potent, was revolutionary. Intercept attacks instead of waiting to block, take the most direct path, strike not just with the hands, but with the intellect. Lee's hand speed was otherworldly, his footwork unpredictable, his ability to read an opponent's next move almost clairvoyant. But beyond the physical, it was their mental exchange that defined their bond. They could sit for hours discussing the limitations of rigid styles, the philosophy behind combat, and the psychology of a fighter. Norris was struck by Lee's emphasis on formlessness, on the idea that a true martial artist must adapt like water, taking the shape of any challenge, flowing through resistance rather than clashing head-on. But martial techniques weren't the only thing the two legends discussed behind closed doors. At the time, Bruce Lee had already noticed Hollywood pushing him aside. Many actors ignored his invitations to auditions, while others flatly refused to work with him. Hollywood executives insisted on confining him to limiting roles. He was losing hope of becoming more. But in Chuck Norris, Bruce Lee found a loyal friend, someone he could lean on both on and off screen. What emerged from their time together wasn't rivalry. It was alchemy. They ignited something within each other. And though they would later become icons in very different ways, their meeting in 1966 was a silent detonation that forever altered the course of martial arts in the West. So, when Bruce Lee decided to give everything to a movie he would write, direct, and star in, he had no doubt about who he wanted as his final opponent. And thus The Way of the Dragon was born, and the world witnessed something that redefined martial arts combat on screen. The Coliseum Showdown, more than a fight. By 1972, Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris's relationship had evolved, from sparring partners to artistic collaborators about to etch their names into film history. This evolution culminated in The Way of the Dragon, Bruce Lee's directorial debut, where he made a bold creative choice, casting Chuck Norris, then six-time world karate champion, as the final on-screen adversary. The setting? None other than Rome's legendary Colosseum, a stage as dramatic and storied as the clash itself. But here's where reality and legend blur. The Colosseum sequence wasn't authorized. They had no permits, no safety nets, no margin for error. To bring the vision to life, Lee and his crew secretly bribed local guards, securing just 1 hour, 60 precious minutes, to film what would become the most iconic martial arts fight scene ever shot. No room for mistakes. And yet, within that stolen window of opportunity, something timeless was created. No stunt doubles. No smoke and mirrors. What you see on screen is exactly what happened. Two masters of their craft, testing not only their physical limits but also their ability to tell a story. Long, unbroken takes showcase their skills in real time. Lee's lightning speed against Norris's raw, grounded power. The pacing was sporadic, a dance of breath, sweat, and controlled violence. The silence of the ancient amphitheater only amplified each strike, each fall, each glance. But beyond the physicality, the choreography carried rare narrative weight. This wasn't just a fight. It was a philosophical duel. Lee's character embodied fluidity, adaptability, and Eastern philosophy. Norris's cult represented rigidity, tradition, and brute strength. As the battle unfolded, Lee systematically dismantled Norris, not just physically, but ideologically, demonstrating the triumph of flexibility over force, self-expression over mechanical repetition. Yet unlike many actors who walked away from Bruce Lee feeling humiliated, Chuck Norris lost the fight with a smile on his face. What makes the Colosseum duel endure isn't just its technical brilliance, it's its soul. It wasn't flashy spectacle. It was a distilled meditation on combat, filmed in a 2,000-year-old arena once built for blood sport, now echoing with a confrontation that transcended violence and approached art. For Bruce Lee, it wasn't just a final fight scene. It was a statement, a masterpiece, a chance to merge philosophy with fists, cinema with combat, legacy with legend. And in Chuck Norris, he found the perfect counterbalance, not a villain, but a worthy rival. Chuck's honest confession. It's rare for a fighter of Chuck Norris's caliber to make such an admission. A six-time undefeated world karate champion, a martial arts Hall of Famer, and a Hollywood icon, Norris spent decades at the pinnacle of physical discipline. But when Bruce Lee's name comes up, his tone changes. Less competitive, more reverent. If it had been a real fight, Norris once confessed, his voice calm and steady, Bruce would have beaten me. It was a statement that stunned fans worldwide, not only because of who said it, but because it contradicted the bravado often associated with martial arts legends. But Norris wasn't exaggerating. He spoke from experience. The two men had trained together regularly in the late 1960s. At first, their styles clashed like night and day. Norris's Tang Soo Do and karate background emphasized powerful kicks, control, and structure. Lee, still developing Jeet Kune Do, was all speed and improvisation, a whirlwind of explosive hand techniques and lightning reflexes. In our early sessions, I could outkick him, Norris recalled. That was my specialty. But Bruce didn't need to win the first round. He just needed to watch. Bruce Lee was the purest kind of student. Every sparring session was a classroom. He analyzed movement patterns, identified timing gaps, then dismantled them. Not with brute force, but by turning an opponent's strengths against them. Within weeks, the balance shifted. Lee began integrating Norris's techniques into his own fighting, refining them, re-engineering them, blending them with his own traps and lightning speed. But what truly made Lee unbeatable, according to Norris, wasn't his body. It was his mind. Bruce didn't fight for points, Norris said. He fought as if his life depended on it. That survival mentality, that refusal to hesitate, gave Lee an edge few could handle. And unlike most fighters, he didn't rely on routines. There was no fixed plan. One day he fought like a boxer, the next like a fencer, the next like a street brawler. He fused styles and philosophies effortlessly, making him dangerously unpredictable. Norris later described sparring with Lee as, like fighting a ghost who thinks 10 steps ahead. Despite the hypothetical question of who would win, there was never true rivalry between them. In fact, there was deep respect. Why Hollywood feared him? Despite his cinematic brilliance, his charisma, and his revolutionary martial artistry, an odd pattern emerged in Hollywood. Many actors, even established stars, flatly refused to work with Bruce Lee. To outsiders, it might have looked like scheduling conflicts or creative differences. But insiders whispered a darker truth. Bruce Lee had a presence that transcended performance. On set, he didn't just act, he radiated mastery. He didn't demand attention, he commanded it. His confidence wasn't fabricated Hollywood bravado. It was the calm, lethal certainty of someone who had trained, bled, and pushed himself beyond ordinary human limits. And that terrified people. In an industry built on illusion, Bruce Lee was uncompromisingly real. Every move, every look, every line came from lived experience, not rehearsal. He was the warrior. And for actors who had built careers pretending to be one, it was destabilizing. His brilliance didn't just outshine others. It exposed them. Norris explained it simply, the people who criticized Bruce were always the ones who never fought him. Those who trained or sparred with him, respected him. Even those who didn't like him, feared him. Bruce Lee didn't just challenge Hollywood. He shook the very foundations of martial arts. Where others clung to rigid traditions, Lee saw flaws in dogma. He broke free and created Jeet Kune Do, the way of the intercepting fist. A philosophy, not just a style. A blueprint for evolution. And in Chuck Norris, he found not just a sparring partner, but a catalyst. Someone whose techniques helped shape that evolution. The legacy they built together. The Way of the Dragon was never meant to change the world. Not at first. Bruce envisioned it as a passion project, a small film for Asian audiences, shot in Rome on a limited budget. But destiny had bigger plans. What began as a niche martial arts movie exploded into a global phenomenon. And while the dazzling fight choreography and exotic European setting drew attention, it was something deeper that held it. It was the electric chemistry between two titans, Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris. On paper, they were opposites. Bruce, the fluid philosopher warrior from Hong Kong. Chuck, the disciplined American karate champion. But when they stepped into that ancient Roman arena, they didn't just stage a fight. They immortalized a moment. Every strike carried respect. Every pause, admiration. It wasn't a battle. It was a ballet. A brutal yet beautiful dialogue that transcended cinema. Behind the scenes, their bond was even stronger. When Bruce chose Chuck, he knew Norris wouldn't refuse him like so many Hollywood actors had. Norris understood Lee's power, his innovation, his strength, and respected it. Together, they didn't just choreograph a fight. They choreographed a movement. Their legacy isn't measured in box office numbers or awards. It lives on in every child who tied a black belt after watching that film. In every action movie that dares to make fighting poetic instead of chaotic. In the silent reverence martial artists feel for that moment when two legends met, not as enemies, but as equals. Chuck's final word on Bruce Lee. After decades of silence, Chuck Norris, now 85, finally broke it. And his words didn't just echo in martial arts circles. They sent shockwaves through Hollywood, through history, and through the hearts of everyone who ever wondered what it was like to stand beside a legend. He wasn't just acting martial arts, Chuck said. He was a martial artist. He didn't play it. He lived it, breathed it. And when you saw that in person, you either rose to the occasion, or you ran. Actors didn't refuse to work with Bruce Lee because he was difficult. They avoided him not out of ego or arrogance. The truth was far more humbling, and far more inspiring. They refused because they couldn't keep up. Standing next to Bruce Lee was like standing next to fire. Beautiful. Mesmerizing. But dangerous if you weren't forged in the same flame. Chuck Norris doesn't speak with envy or regret. He speaks as one of the few who stood toe-to-toe with Bruce Lee, and lived to carry that memory with reverence, with clarity, and with something close to love. Have you ever met someone so talented that their very presence changed the way you saw yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching this video with us, and we'll see you in the next one.